Hey kids, it's time for another spooky tale from Captain Jeremiah Johnson on KWJUDAS. Well, hello, kiddies, and welcome back to the third follow-up episode of the Camp Jeremiah Tales. None of this was actually planned out, in case anybody hasn't noticed yet. I recorded the last two episodes a long time ago with another friend, and wasn't really even planning on releasing them under my own podcast, but when I had so many cancellations this month of October, where we were supposed to be telling scary stories anyways, I figured why not just use those recordings to fill in the slots of my own podcast. Now that we have had a fourth cancellation, that means every guest I've had this month is canceled, coincidentally enough. And the ones that I've actually talked to, some of them just didn't respond, just stopped responding in communication at all. But the ones that I have were all cancellations due to deaths. Just kind of a funny coincidence. Anyways, it's kind of just, again, coincidental that all of this kind of got cleared away in order for these stories to get told and for these shows to happen. So, as I mentioned in part 2 of the Camp Jeremiah series, and also the last podcast I released about the Lehigh Hospital, one of my sisters actually was involved a little bit in both, not those incidences, but just those locations, and has her own personal stories and different light to shed on both those situations that I figure interesting enough to include in this whole saga here. So, since Camp Jeremiah is still kind of the main focus of interest, we'll start with that and maybe move on to the Lehigh Hospital because she actually worked there. But as far as the Camp Jeremiah stories, I'm sorry that I referred to you as Amanda in part 2. We have Maxwell here.
Thank you.
Part 3 as our follow-up.
Formerly known as Amanda.
I was kind of using that name mostly because I was talking to Robbie Jolly, who knows all of us from when we were kids. You know what I mean? And so he wouldn't even know who the fuck I was talking about. You know what I mean? And so, anyways, we have my sister on the line here who was involved with the car incident. Now, she was the one who did not have a seizure. Tirsa had a seizure, and you were the one who was asking what happened at Camp Jeremiah. And the mistake that I made, this is your story, not mine, and so I'm sorry I didn't quite tell it right, and that's another reason why I wanted to get you on here. I didn't realize that you were the one driving.
Yes.
Okay, yes. So about what year was this?
This was, it had to have been, I want to say, 2011, 2012. I was living in Salt Lake at the time, downtown.
Okay. Well, now you're both living in Oregon. Was Tirsa, she was living in Utah too at the time, correct?
I think she was still living in Logan, but she had come down to visit for like whatever reason and was going to spend the night at my place.
Right.
Yada yada. Yeah.
What exactly happened? You know, you just randomly popped up. So, what happened at Camp Jeremiah? Kind of like you did to me when we were there.
Yeah.
God damn
Actually,
it.
I want to apologize. I didn't realize that fucked you up so much. So I'm sorry about that.
You didn't want to talk for the rest of the night. That was the worst part about it, is you're like, well, I'm going to bed. And I'm like, what?
Well, good night. Good night. All right. See you tomorrow.
So anyways.
So what happened? So, like, I don't know. I told Tirsa this in the car, and this is what I was bringing up to her, is that, like, I had been having dreams of Camp Jeremiah.
Recently, or since you were a kid?
Not recently, but this was back in 2011.
When I say recently, I mean recently to the event.
Oh, yes. Recently to the event, yes. Right. Like, I was having some dreams about Camp Jeremiah.
At that time.
And had them in the past, and it was a reoccurring dream that, like, I had when I was younger as well. So, like, this was not a singular event, but it seemed to progress, like, further in 2011. We'll say it's 2011 when this happened.
Right.
And
so what were the
I
dreams?
don't know.
Before we get into the incident, let's back up into the dreams, because you mentioned something that I have seen in the dreams that just blew my fucking mind when you brought it up.
Yeah, you texted me that earlier. I was like, what the hell? Okay. So, we're in my dream. It's nighttime at Camp Jeremiah, but it's like a full moon. You've got the field, right?
Yeah.
And there's the lamppost at the very far end of the field.
Yeah, the north end.
The north end, yeah. And, like, past the caboose, where you would go to the trail, either to the left to go to, like, the amphitheater, or to the right to go to the pond.
Right.
And in my dream, there's always this dark figure under the lamppost.
Yeah, and I don't think you're the first person to describe that either. I can remember the two girls who I've tried to keep their names anonymous, but you know who I'm talking about, who I worked with at Camp Jeremiah, describing similar things like that.
Yeah. So the guy, he's got, like, I don't know, almost like a 20s vibe to him, is how I described it to Tirsa and how I'll describe it to you.
So you see distinct characteristics of this person.
Well, I could see kind of what he was wearing. Right. It was definitely a he.
But it's not just some big dark figure that, undescribable.
No, it wasn't indescribable. Like, I could see that he was wearing a fedora. He had kind of like a suit look on. But I couldn't see his face, couldn't see like shoes or anything like that. His feet almost, I don't know, it sounds weird, didn't seem to end. Like, his feet were, the shadows blended his feet into the ground.
Right.
So it kind of looked like he just, he made the movements of walking toward the pond, and this would be the upper pond, if you remember right.
Yes, of course. That's the hot spot.
And I don't know if you remember, but those bridges, you can hear when someone goes across them.
They're loud.
You know? Yeah, it's like the choo-choo, choo-choo.
It's very difficult to go across those and be stealthy.
He goes across it, and it's quiet. There's no sound.
No sound, of course.
In my dream. And in my dream, I follow him across the bridge to the pond. And I get to I don't know if you remember, there was like a small, tiny little dock area.
Yeah.
In that corner.
It's like almost a dock where the actual dock's attached to. When
yeah, it kind of looked like a pallet or something like that.
Earth.
Like, so I go onto the dock. I get to the lake. The guy's nowhere to be found. He's nowhere.
Right. And the big docks aren't there, right?
The big docks are not there, correct. This is just that tiny one.
Yeah.
It's like a full moon, so you can see very well. So I go to the dock. I stand on the dock and I look into the water. And from the seaweed at the bottom of the pond, this giant gold book. Fuck, I'm shaking. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I mean, this is the craziness. Is the book coming up from the bottom of the pond? I've had this exact same thing, except mine wasn't golden, but it was still just a huge book, like probably bigger than the pallet that you're standing on. Right.
But the book that I saw has the metal brackets on the corners.
Yeah.
It's got one of those metal locks that comes around from the back and locks.
Yep.
And I've and it just rises to the top. And as I'm looking in the water, seeing it rise, a shadow comes up behind me and I wake up. This is how it goes every damn time.
You've had this dream more times than you can count.
Yes.
Huh. See, I had this one just once. Yeah, I have lots of crazy dreams up there, but they're never really reoccurring. But this one has always stood out the most. It was one of the first really crazy ones I had. I think you said something about the book being in chains or something like that.
Yeah, it's locked. It's got chains around it, and it's like it was like struggling to come to the surface, but it like slowly is rising.
But it opens up still, right?
It never opened up for me.
Oh shit! Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, I don't know what's in the book, and you're like, I've seen what's in the book, and I'm like, what?
Okay, so dig this.
Well,
I had this dream like when I was working there, so probably about 17ish. And yeah, I'm staring down, same spot. I'm on that pallet thing, staring straight down into the water, which, in real life, that's not very deep water, but in the dream, it's
maybe
endless.
6 feet.
Especially right in front of the pallet. I mean, you could just walk for a good while before you'll even be waist deep. But in the dream, the depths of this pond are endless, and there's always, there's something about the moss at the bottom. There's something stuffed under there. I've had a couple dreams where there's bodies stuffed under the moss. But this one, a body bag surfaces. It comes floating up to the top, and then the body bag opens up, and the huge book is inside the body bag. And then the book opens up once it gets to the top of the water. Just opens up itself. And so the spread of this book, like I said, is wider than the pallet that you're standing on. And Jake and Tirsa were standing behind me in this dream. We're all three of us just looking down in the water. And the second the book opens, the two of them start freaking out and start screaming the words, "Psycho policeman," over and over and over. And they start running around the entire camp hysterically.
What?
Yeah, I have no idea what psycho policeman means, but it blows my fucking mind that you had a dream about this book, and you bring it up to Tirsa, who in my dream freaks the fuck out about psycho policeman and goes hysterical in my dream, and then in real life, you bring this up, and her eyes roll in the back of her head, and she has a seizure in her heart. Let's cut to that. That's nuts to me.
Let's cut to that. So I'm telling Tirsa about my dream. I'm driving. She's and it's dark. Like it's night. There's the street lights are passing by. I go through I was stopped at a red light, and I'm explaining this stuff to her. And I was like, "Wait, so have you had this dream?" And she's like, "I don't know. It kind of sounds familiar." And so then I mentioned the book. And I was like, wait, did it have chains on it and brackets and a lock? And that's when she started convulsing in my passenger seat.
So she asked about if it had the chains and the lock, or you said that?
No, I asked her because she had said that she had seen a dream or had a dream similar, it sounded familiar or something to her. I'm not sure if she had a dream or what.
But did she mention the book?
I mentioned the book, and she started convulsing.
Okay. That's still that's insane. That.
Right.
That just adds to me, almost adds the creepiest, craziest layer to this whole sequence of stories. I mean, everything that I saw back when I was 16, 17, sure, it has kind of had time to age in my mind, and the shock has kind of worn off a little bit. But there's a real connection here. I mean, I don't know what it is, but the whole book thing, like I said, I already said this. Her freaking out in my dream, and then her having a seizure in real life, is really what's kind of blowing my mind right now.
Well, and it was interesting because
the same book, and that's what triggered the seizure, is you mentioning it.
And as soon as she started convulsing, or as soon as she stopped convulsing, she just kind of looked over at me, and I'm horrified. I'm still driving, but trying to find a place to pull over to be hey, do I need to call the cops? Yeah, what do I do here? I have never been prepared for this.
How long did it last?
It was, I want to say 10, 15 seconds. It was long. Yeah. I was in traffic, so I'm trying to get over on one of those stupid one-way streets.
Yeah.
And like, so I get stopped, and like Tirsa's looking, like she finally stops convulsing and looks over at me, and she's like, "Well, I'm gonna say yes," because I had asked, like, "Yeah, was there a book?" And she was like, "This is." Yeah, so she's like, "I'm gonna say yes."
She
So
just all of a sudden
man.
snaps back into it, and that's her response.
Yep.
Even more mind blowing. It's just like, holy fuck, what is going on here?
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest reasons why it's like, man, besides, the stuff in the past, why I have to get you and her on here, because it does just add this whole new layer to it. That just leaves so many more question marks, and I guess that's kind of why we're doing this in a way.
Right.
Even though I said earlier...
Because it's weird it's all connected.
Yeah, and it was a coincidence purely that these shows got done when they did, how they did. But is it really?
And their reasoning, yeah. As you were mentioning that, I was like, there's no coincidence.
Yeah, is it?
There's no coincidence.
I've never had 4 guests cancel, like a whole month just get cleared from KWJUDAS, just to enable these, these shows to happen. So, did you have any other experiences at Camp Jeremiah that you wanted to relate, or should we get on to the Lehigh Hospital?
Well, not necessarily at Camp Jeremiah, but I will say, and this is something that freaked Tirsa out a little bit, is the 20s guy.
Yeah.
I saw him at our house growing up.
Really?
Yeah, all the time. I thought he was my friend. I named him Tom.
That's crazy.
I don't know who he is. But I remember I recognized him in my dream and was like, what the fuck's Tom doing in here? Like,
That's pretty nuts.
That is an interesting coincidence.
Definitely draw a lot of other questions. And that's the thing about all these things is, they're just a dream. But still, how do you explain so much of the other stuff going on around them, particularly the incident with Tirsa?
Yeah.
So, to hopefully shed a little bit more light on that, we're going to have Tirsa up next, and she's going to tell us her point of view on that, and also some other experiences that she has had. So, without further ado, now we're going to switch things over to my other younger sister, just to update the audience. This is the sister who was in the car, who had the seizure. And so I knew that she had a little bit of prior experiences there at camp that I was aware of long before I ever heard about the seizure incident. And so it made a little bit more sense for Tirsa to be a little more involved in all this because she already kind of had been. I never really imagined that Maxie would have anything to do with this, but apparently she has had a lot more to do with it than I thought, and I can't wait for you to hear her side of the story as well. To be honest, after that interview, and then knowing what is about to come, talking to you, I think that this one might be the best one so far. Maybe just because the other stories are not new to me, and I'm getting a bunch of new information, and that's exciting to me.
Sure.
So, we're going to start with the car incident. According to her, she brought up the book, and that is pretty much what triggered your seizure. And you have very, very little recollection of this. In fact, we kind of had to remind you that it happened.
Yeah.
So, what was that like, just kind of from your point of view?
So the incident itself, so I remember her talking about the guy, the
man in the fedora,
the man in the hat,
right?
Because that connects a lot with my own story. And I remember, I have a really strong visual of the book because that too I know connects in with the general story. But outside of that, like, it's actually really surprising hearing about this, because I think she was telling me that happened like 2011, 2012.
About that.
Yeah, which is years past me being involved in any of this.
Right.
Like, I was doing almost all of my stuff back in like 2004, 2005.
Yeah, a couple years after all the stuff that happened with me and my friends.
Right. So it's just really interesting to me that like something like this would have happened without me like actually like seeking that stuff out anymore. Like, I very deliberately kind of put a block like behind a lot of that. I wasn't looking to explore it anymore.
That's why it just blew my mind so bad because of how long after all this other stuff had happened.
Right.
And so, when you say that you know that the book is connected, so have you seen the book or the guy in any of your dreams, or have you just heard, like, me and her talk about it?
No, so the guy is connected with all of my stories. Like, he's actually, he is a huge just component. So, right, so there's always the little girl, and there's also always the guy in basically everything. And there were other characters that would come in and out, but those two were always prominent.
But is this in your dreams, or where is, like, what plane of existence
well,
are we
so
talking about?
that, I guess, takes us back to a little bit more to some of like how I got myself involved in this story. I had gotten caught using drugs at school.
I remember that.
Somewhere in this process, I was trying to figure out like myself, and a lot of people go back to religion, and that did not make sense to me, so that's not the direction that I went. And I had a friend one day who was just like, "Hey, you want to play the Ouija board?" And
here we go with the Ouija board again. So you started using the Ouija board, and of course you're like, if we're going to do this, then I know the perfect place to do it at.
No, actually. It was, I found the Ouija board, and as I started going about it, I actually was like, oh, well, okay, well, so while we're doing this, like, let's, I know some spirits that maybe I could try and connect with, and was specifically seeking out the spirits of Camp Jeremiah.
Right.
And so I actually have like this whole other, like, several like months before I even actually went up to the camp, where there was all of this other communication. I don't want to go too far into like the Ouija board stuff, because it does pull away from the camp, but there's also parts of it that I think give context of everything.
Right.
So
in relation to the camp, like, just to summarize in a nutshell, what happened with the Ouija.
Yeah. So I kind of sought out the spirits and started making contact. And the first contact that I made was with, he identified himself as Zach. And this would be, I think, Max's character as well.
I think she called him Tom.
Yeah, she called him something different. I knew that. And I think, and that's where, but with all of this, it actually does all like kind of connect in a weird way.
So what happened with the Ouija board then?
Well, so it's really cryptic and hard to say the full thing, but like whenever there was a time thrown out at us, like be ready by, like it was always 10:23. I don't know. There's some theory with the Ouija board as well that like as you like sit there and like play, right, you're kind of opening yourself up to the spirit. And so in some capacity it is like you could view it as like kind of a partial possession that you are like willingly accepting to. And
so what does this have to do with camp though?
Well, so there came a point within all of this where then we started encountering the little girl. And her name was Olivia, which I know is not the same name that you have used for yours, but my little girl
have to be the same entity,
Right. Right. No, and like, I mean, as I started gathering information and like basically kind of like the end story with, I think a lot of this, I think you encountered one of the other spirits that also gets referenced within this whole weird experience. So it was several months after like all of this kind of Ouija board stuff. And I took this guy up to the camp, and it was him and one of his friends. And nothing super crazy happened. Like that first night, there was kind of a like looking out at, of course, waterfront. That's where everything happens. And seeing, kind of the little girl just sort of like standing there as we're leaving. There was just this kind of like vague impression, this like kind of white glowing little girl.
You actually saw the silhouette of a girl up there at the waterfront?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so what did you do? How long did it last?
Well, at that point, we were already like heading out because the guy that I was interested in, we were standing there, and I was just sitting there sort of staring. It was like, there's something here. But like couldn't it like right it was kind of this like weird thing that couldn't quite connect with it. He at one point just like took off walking in the opposite direction, dropped his flashlight, and just like kept walking. And the other friend was like, what the fuck is going on here? And so like pulls me out of like whatever just kind of like daze that I'm in, and we go walking after him. And he just turns around, or like, and when we like catch up, like he's like on the ground, and like he just like looks up and he's like, did I fall again? Like just like completely unaware of what had just happened. And so it's like, okay, well, something weird's going on, but like, sure, let's go. So nothing super crazy happened that first night, but then a couple days later, I went out there with my best friend, and this is Tisha. And she not being with us anymore, I feel okay throwing her name out there.
That's fine.
So she and I went out there, just the two of us. We're kind of just wandering around, and there comes a point where she just starts acting weird.
What do you mean by acting weird?
Just, I actually wrote down some quotes from her. I guess that as I looked off in a direction where she like kept looking, and ended up seeing this like black figure kind of walk behind this tree. And I jumped back into Tisha, and she's like, what just happened? And I'm like, no, there's this like, I literally just saw somebody move behind this tree.
So about what part of the camp was this? Like,
this would have been probably towards like the caboose, because we hadn't made it to waterfront yet.
On the
that side of things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to kind of, get an idea in my head, like
sure, kind of what all is happening.
Okay, so you see a figure drop
right. So I see this black figure that like goes behind this tree, and then Tisha's sort of looking off in like a different direction, and she's like, oh, like, do you see that? And she's like, there's a white figure. And so there's kind of this like, right, so I see this black figure, she sees this white figure. And like, but if you put the flashlight up, it disappeared.
Right.
And so like, right, so we start moving towards it. And we're, of course, obviously looking around us as we're moving that direction. And Tisha had picked up some, like, she's like looking back towards the black figure, and she says, it's following us. And
damn.
I guess at this point, that's where we start seeing the white figure, or where we look towards kind of where that figure had been seen.
Right.
And at one point, she turns back around as we're kind of between the two lakes, and she says that the tall black figure was like crouched behind her and runs towards her. And the figure ran right through her. And she said that she was just on the ground. that like she didn't understand what had happened. She was just on the ground. She's shaking. She's kind of asking me like, did you see that? Did you see that? And I'm like, no, because like that's not what I was like looking at. I was totally looking a different direction. She said it actually run off down the path. But like said that like after it had gone through this, she was feeling this like tug, this thing like pulling on her. So we're kind of following this, this pull, which goes down into that spot below where they do a lot of like the archery stuff, I think.
Yeah.
At one point she just turns off the flashlights. She's like, no, the lights are attracting them. So like I turn off my light and we're just kind of sitting there trying to like, sort of see like what's going on. And at one point she says, we're supposed to cross the bridge. There's kind of this like, yeah, probably, but like it's, like we're both terrified. It's just the two of us. Mm-hmm. Like as we get to kind of that opening, we start just pointing out, like both of us are just like, oh yeah, there's one. They're just pointing out the different spirits. All of them are these black spirits.
Jesus
and
Christ.
These kind of tall, like black cloaked, like figures. So like, I mean, I think often you hear kind of things like this referred to as like the shadow people or like something like that. And we were completely surrounded, just kind of all over the place. And so we tried to like go a different direction, trying to figure out how to get out.
The two girls that, J and W that I had my experiences with described almost the exact same thing happening when the two of them just went up by themselves.
Oh, interesting. I actually didn't know that.
I told you about that because it was one of the first things that happened up there before things really started getting crazy. But it was as the sun was starting to go down, and so it was, just starting to get dark, and they were making their way up to the waterfront, and as the closer they got to the top of the camp, the more they just kept seeing more and more both black and white figures appearing on all edges of the camp. And when they started seeing them get closer to the gateway is when they decided we should probably turn around and get out of here. Because they didn't want to get cut off. So it's just another one of those things that hearing you describe this, I'm just like, God damn, like this is, this has already happened kind of thing. This is, the second or third time that one of you guys is describing something that, is almost a repeat.
Right.
So how did you guys just finally just run and just get the hell out of there?
No, so like we were trying to leave, and as we like would start going that direction, like it was like there was this like almost physical force that was moving really hard. It seemed to be impacting Tisha more than it was like impacting me, but of course I'm not going to leave her there.
Right.
But so like it was just this like actually like moving being very physically difficult. And kind of another just like weird, interesting, I guess, thing that happened. So like once we finally got back to the car, which was, I think we actually tried to approach it very like a lot more cautiously. Like, well, let's try and like, just move as slowly as we can and get out of here, trying not to draw like any more attention.
Yeah.
But we get back to the car, which I have it like all written down in here that apparently there had been like a pretty good rain like earlier that day or the previous day. And we get back to the car and there's actually this like small child footprint on the passenger side door, which that could be totally coincidence. I'm not here to say. It was something that tripped us out is kind of weird. What I can say. And like, as we leave, we're just like, what was that? The foot, it was way too small for either of us. It just didn't really make sense for it to like be there. Yeah. But that was
may or may not be pertinent, but still just weird.
Right. May or may not. It was just kind of an interesting thing, right?
So,
like
that still isn't even the craziest thing you've seen up there.
No.
Because that was pretty nuts, but if you got a better one, then let's have it.
Yeah. Well, so this is where I guess kind of the possession stuff probably starts getting even weirder. Right. Kind of right after that, it was like that we both had this pull to kind of keep trying to go back up there, It was actually the very next day that we went back up.
Damn.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the fucked up thing about this camp is you could have just experienced something that some people would consider traumatic, and you still can't help but want to go back.
Yeah.
Almost everybody, no matter how terrible of an experience they've had, most anyone, not everyone, there's been a few, you know, like some of my friends that were involved, one experience there was enough. But it is kind of nuts how it gets you like that. And not just me, not just you, you know. But anyways, proceed with the next day.
Right. So it was actually Tisha who the next day was like, we need to go back up there.
Right.
And so we knew that it couldn't just be the two of us. We understood that at that time. And so we got a third person. Which that third person, we kind of even knew it was like, she's not the right person, but this also, like, this is what makes the most sense. It's like this other friend, and she was really like skittish about it and didn't like the idea, and yeah, she went up that one time and that was done.
Right.
But when we went and did this though, we get up there, we just make it into the camp. Like, we didn't even make it very far into the camp. We cross over. You can just feel this tug that's kind of continuing to kind of pull you forward. And I'm feeling it. Tisha's feeling it. Friend is not. She's terrified and wanting to just go back to the car. And all of a sudden, I just fall to the ground. Like, unbeknownst, I have no idea what happened. I'm just like there, unable to move. The friend starts like freaking out. She's like, you know, remember, like,
so
you know, if any, I just couldn't move. Like, I just like fall to the ground, and it's like, I don't like, not like paralyzed per se, but just this, like, you know, like moving is actually incredibly difficult. So Tisha also, like, kind of similar thing, just like kabla, like to the ground. And like the friend is just like, right, like, what's going on? Like, come on, like, we gotta go. This is weird. Like, this is not okay. We gotta head out.
Yeah. What the fuck are you guys doing?
And Tisha looks over at her and she's like, you have to help us. Like, we can't do this on our own. So like this friend actually comes over and is literally trying to drag us out of the camp. And she's pulling us, and we're getting kind of back across the bridge.
Wow. And
all of a sudden, like, we get to the other side, and Tisha just like has this burst of energy and takes off running back into the camp.
Oh shit.
And starts saying, you know, they are in my body. Tisha is leaving.
Oh fuck.
And fall to the ground again, like, moments after that. And I'm sitting there, like, kind of on top of her, and I'm right here, like, I start to feel myself leave even a little bit within this, and like this like disconnection that sort of is happening. And the other friend, she's on top, and she's like, no, like, you have to stay with me. Like, you have to stay with me. You cannot go. And she's just like really trying to, like, I guess, keep me grounded.
So are you still not able to move?
Not really, no. Like, just kind of in this like sort of weird like spot. Like, she was like, you know, pulling us, which I could kind of move when she was pulling, but then after Tisha went off running, it was kind of this like bleh, and I collapsed again. And
right. So then what'd you do?
I guess, like, there was this period of just me, like, sitting there, like, rocking back and forth. And the friend is like, you know, stop that. Like, but it was like, I can't stop it. Like, this just, like, is what's happening.
And Tisha's still just, like, further up the field, still just laying there?
You know, like, we're near each other. She's not still, like, off running. Right. She, like, had sort of collapsed again.
Right.
And
then you're finally, at what point were you finally able to stop rocking back and forth?
At some point, it's actually, I wrote about a half hour after Tisha fell, she sits up and she starts saying all sorts of things. And not all of the words are necessarily connecting, and I don't understand a lot of what's happening, but she says, "It's okay. Everything's going to be fine." She's in the circle now. Then she stands up and starts to walk towards the bridge. We jump up and start running after her. So I guess at this point, there's kind of this like, okay, like things are maybe coming back to some sort of homeostasis. And the friend jumps up and starts just running at her and like grabbing her again. And Tisha's sitting there. She's like, it's okay. It's okay. Like, they just need to finish. It won't last long. It just needs to be finished. And she just kept repeating this over and over and over again. And I'm still kind of at like my other spot, so I can't really hear like all of that. And at this point, unfortunately, this is where really the notes end. And so I am like 100% with this story, basing the rest of this off of memory. So at some point, I remember the friend kind of getting Tisha, getting her dragged like back to the parking lot and kind of pulling us both along. But within all of this, there was some just weird information that Tisha was saying that, and some of it she like specifically was like, she had said that I'm supposed to know, but it's not my time yet. Like, so like me personally, I'm supposed to have some information, but I can't have that information now. And so Tisha was sort of this like holder of information for me that actually I never got. She passed in 2005. I want to say 2002, maybe it was 2006.
Yeah.
2006. And there was different bits of information that we kind of gathered along the way. But so that was like specifically at the camp, some of the craziest stuff, or at least like the beginning of it. But like I was going up there, like I said, probably every week, if not multiple times a week, for like several months. I was just up there all the time, kind of whenever I could fit it in. And so like it was just like experience after experience of similar stuff that was going on with this, and we were just gathering more and more information. We would go up there, and sometimes I would be the one that was possessed, sometimes it was Tisha, sometimes it was Courtney. And I guess the end of it, kind of when I finally was just like, I'm done, like I can't do this anymore, was it's just like it had just gone so far, and there were these weird little like partial possessions even that almost sort of like were happening, where like I never felt like I did not feel connected to me. I felt like I was just being ripped in like a whole bunch of different directions, that it was like I had like opened myself up in some capacity or whatever to just be this like vessel, and it like just felt like there were like these other spirits that would just come like in and out, and like I was having like weird conversations, and I would have solidly been diagnosed with a psychotic disorder like this ever actually like gone anywhere. Like no doubt about it, just with like everything that was going on.
So what kind of information did you gather? Like, I mean, any more names or any more of a backstory from, because you remember the little bit of a story I got with the Jenny character, and her parents, talking about her parents and her little brother. Just in those two experiences, I was actually able to gather quite a bit of information.
Yeah, well, so trying to be as like concise as possible. As I was gathering up all of my stuff to like do this had actually fallen out of just like, my pile of papers, that it's not even all like, exclusive to this. It's like, oh, there's actually a lot of like questions answered on this piece of paper.
All right, let's hear it.
So this is a piece of paper that it was kind of during one of my sort of weird, I guess, being the vessel for whatever the fuck spirit thing. I'm having a conversation with Olivia, being the little girl who she often connected with Courtney.
Were you at the camp at this time?
No, I don't remember exactly where I was when this was all happening, but this was my life, for for months, like it was just this like, right, like I was so disconnected from self. So throughout this, there's multiple times where Olivia is trying to get me to go back to the camp. She's like, you need to come back, you need to come back, you need to save me. It's like, you know, kind of a like, well, I can't, or I can't be out there all the time, or something to that effect. I ask at some point, you know, is there anything you want to tell me? There's a yes. I ask, can you? And she says, no. Why not? It will hurt too much. I can't let them get you. Who? Zach's friends. They don't want you to know. Why won't Zach talk then? Or, wait, sorry, who does? Me, Zach. Why won't Zach talk then? He sold his soul, and now he can't help. So it's up to you? Yes.
Damn.
Can you do it? If you help me, I need you to come back. Be strong. It needs to end. Why? It's gone on too long. When did it happen? 1960.
Jesus.
What day? December 23rd.
That's what I'm talking about. Some actual
Yeah.
dates? Man, all
Yeah.
right. Good scout work, Tirsa.
Right. Actually, like, and that was kind of where it was like, oh, this is really weird to have found kind of right now. So December 23rd, 1960. I have no idea what that date's supposed to mean.
Looked it up?
Probably, but it's repressed with a lot of this other information that like I just like don't recall.
I think I'm gonna have to look that up after this show.
Yeah,
Do a little
probably
more digging.
worth.
But yeah, please go on. But
Yeah,
that's some good info right there.
Right. So again, like I have no idea, but what's up with water? It hurts. They used water. It hurts. How did they use water? Cold. Did they put you in the lake? Yes. Did they baptize you? Yes. Satanic baptism. Is that why you're in white? Yes. It had to be done that way. 13 died, right? Yes.
Wait, where did you get that?
That would have just been some other information that would have come at a different point.
Died.
13 died. So that's kind of where it's like, right. So these other like girls that have been encountered, which actually, as this goes on, they were all 8 years old. And they were all girls.
So Jenny could have been one of them.
That's my guess. Would that be that? Yeah, she's another part of that same thing.
Man, this is nuts.
Right.
So, just real quick before you go on, the answers that you're getting, is this all being communicated just through the Ouija board right now?
No, this is directly through me. Like this was literally, I would sit there with like a pen and I would write out a question and I would sort of like let the answer write itself out.
Okay.
It's weird, and some of the pages, there's like weird drawings, and there's some where it's like, and I mean, you can kind of tell when they were like different spirits, I guess, if you believe in that sort of thing. Like, I don't know, it's so wild.
You said earlier that there's totally different handwriting as well.
Yeah. So different handwriting. There's like parts of it where there's like more cursive. There's like parts of it where like normally like when I would kind of do this sort of thing, I would like relax my hand, right, to kind of let it sort of just let the hand kind of do its thing. I don't know. It's all really weird, and I have a hard time with even like making sense of it myself because like it's so woo woo and it's just wild and like crazy, and I'm like, what is this? Like this doesn't right, but it's because I know it sounds crazy. I'm totally aware that it sounds crazy.
No, that's good. So after the 13 died, all 8 years old, obviously that probably is information you gathered from a different session.
Yeah, this was just right. So yeah, 13 died. Yes. Were they all 8? Yes. Right. 8 is the age. It had to happen at 8.
That's when you get baptized.
Right, which is kind of a weird thing, like with that. Yeah, which according to Mormons anyway. But why are you the only one heard? Zach allows it. The others don't mean anything to him, which Olivia, also within this, Olivia was Zach's sister. Why did they need 13? In order for the ritual to work, you need 13. How many of Zach's friends were there? Too many. I just couldn't escape. She had to kill me. I didn't want... Oh, that's the... one of Zach's friends. That was, I guess, his kind of like more like girlfriend or something.
Damn.
Right, so who is her? May. She doesn't like it. Like what? Olivia. Why not? Zach couldn't be with her because I stopped it. How long have you been like this in me? One day. Why are you like this? I'm trying to get you a message. Have you done it? Me. Oh, no, that probably says no. Can you? Yes. Let me help to let it happen. I need you to let me show you how. You are resisting. Are you draining my energy? Yes. Why? Communicating takes energy. I've noticed. I need you. Are you still here? Of course. Why do I still feel like me? We're similar, both female and introverts, innocent. I don't know, we can argue that part, but how many of the 13 were male? All female. Are you doing okay? I could be better. Why? She can't let me go. Why not? I want to tell you. So she's watching you. Yes. Who is she? May. And that's kind of where that sort of ended in this one. But there's, I don't know, I have pages of that stuff, which is unfortunate that that's what I've got, but I don't have the actual like journal entries of like what happened up there. I just know that it was a lot more of the same stuff and just piecing together more and more information. And it just came to a point, it was like, this is too much. Like, right, I can't be like sitting here existing with like spirits in my body, like, and just kind of coming and going. And like, I felt like I had no control over what was happening. The like shadow people were everywhere. And so I was very deliberately pulling myself away from that.
Right. And who could blame you? I mean, I kind of felt the same way after not even the same amount of experiences you seem to have garnered. So if you do feel so inclined to go over the notes and writings that you've got and see if there might be enough material for another episode, I am more than willing to do this again. Until then, we're going to get to the third and final leg of this third and final, well, hopefully not final part of the Camp Jeremiah tales, at least for now, where Tirsa's going to share with us one last experience that isn't really correlated with the rest of them and involves a few other people. So, stick around, folks, and thank you for being with us tonight.
So, the Matt story kind of takes a total different turn. So before I had met Matt, I was quite actively trying to pull myself away from everything that was going on, stop engaging with stuff, I wasn't going to the camp anymore, stopped doing stuff with like the Ouija board.
Right.
Specifically made a point of trying to pull myself away from it.
Right.
Because, I felt like I was losing my mind in some capacity, like things were just too wild. The Matt story, he's actually joining us for his part of the tale a little bit later.
Thank you for joining us, Fart Eyes.
You go, Glenn.
Right. So anyway.
My friend Tisha, she had introduced the two of us. Matt and I had, I think, fairly recently just started dating. It'd been a couple months maybe. And Tisha was trying to plan a trip to come back up to Utah County. And her ride was going to be Matt and our buddy Wally. So I went home because I knew that they were planning on heading out. They were just kind of waiting for the go-ahead. So I go home, nothing descript per se about going home itself, but I have this really disturbing dream.
Yeah, always with the dreams.
And I actually wrote out the dream, so figured I would just read specifically what I wrote. So it's dated January 29th, 2005.
It's old Arliss's birthday.
My dream started out with me in my room. All of the lights are out, and there's a man in front of me in the shadows. We are talking about something, and then this little girl comes up to my leg and starts pulling on it. She is urging me to do something. There's a glitch. I'm in my car, driving. It seems like I'm driving to the camp. It's broad daylight, but the back seat is just as dark as it was in my room. The man is still there, hidden in shadows. We are talking. Then the little girl's face appears right in front of me. I start screaming hysterically. I wake up, then go back to sleep. I'm not sure if I actually woke up or if that was part of the dream. But now is where the dream gets weird. I'm up at the camp. It's some youth conference or something. There's this girl that I click with, and we start hanging out. She has long black hair, dark eyes, olive skin, and she is very skinny and short. We are walking, and she decides to wade across the river. So I'm going to pause here for just a moment. The river that she was wading across wasn't even actually the river. It was the one that kind of went across the entrance. So it was more of like a creek.
Right.
Just to give a little context of where we are in all of this.
Yeah.
Back to the dream. I watched her make it over to the other side and pull herself out onto these broken stairs. I go across the bridge as she is climbing up the stairs into this hut that only has one corner left of the hut. Like everything else has been disintegrated and just kind of disappeared. She was saying something about a baby as I walk up to her. And as we're looking at this wall, she ends up wiping her hands on the wall. And beneath this, the dust, all of the dust, it says prayer in a bold purple, and there are 6 other religious words columned down that I can't remember.
Weird.
The wall is pink, and to the left of those words are 2 small groups of words at the top and bottom of the column words written in black, but they had nothing to do with the religious words. Glitch. Now, it's our family reunion up at the camp. We are all just sitting around doing our daily thing when there is a creaking and a tree falls. All of a sudden, the trees and branches just start falling. I'm trying to explain how to avoid the falling trees, but no one can hear me. They are falling in this way that is leading us up to waterfront. I look over at the table where my grandma and grandpa and other relatives were sitting. There's a creaking and a tree falls right on top of them.
God damn.
Glitch. I wake up and go into this room. I hear this man saying something about how my new friend had disappeared. So kind of back to that original dream. And they had found her. And as he said this, there's a flash of how she was found that went through my head. She was all crouched up, eyes wide, and her skin was gone everywhere except for her face.
Wow.
The man got a group of people together to go gather up the body. The last thing I saw was a close-up of this little boy's face filled with terror as he was being hoisted down this elevator along with others to the place where the body was found. And then I woke up. So that's kind of the dream itself, which it's interesting that as I had read this for the first time yesterday. And I knew that I had written it down, but I had no idea where it was or anything, and kind of expected that it just disappeared with a lot of the other stuff that I had done. But it's interesting because reading through it, there's like some parts that stand out to me, but I actually want to elaborate a little bit on the end part of as they go to like gather up the body, because I do remember that part fairly well. So where the like kind of elevator thing is, where this group of people are going down to, is actually kind of right over also by like out towards waterfront. But there's that river that goes there right by the bridge, kind of goes under the three bridges. And this kind of would have actually played into kind of more that wall of the west side of the river. Only, of course, in my dream, it was a lot more exaggerated. And so there was this, right, her body being found with, all of the skin basically removed. And buried, not even like buried, but like hidden almost in this like cave type thing. And yeah, they're going down to descend to try and like pull her back out.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So I have this weird dream the night that, right, Matt and Wally are heading to go pick up Tisha. Right. But like I wake up the next morning and the dream just lingers long enough for me to write the dream down, and it's just totally messing with me.
Yeah, I've had that many times.
The call finally comes, so I head over to our buddy Wally's house, and Matt just kind of comes over and like gives me a hug, and he's like, "Hey, what? How are you?" Pretty standard. And I just start with I had this like really messed up dream that's kind of fucking with me, and I proceed to tell him about the dream, and I, of course, didn't bring the writing, but like I described it in probably more vivid detail even as I'm going through, and as I'm telling the story, Matt and Wally just kind of keep giving this look to each other. And I get to the end of everything, and Matt just kind of looks at me. He's like, "Well, we weren't really going to tell you this."
But...
And I will let him pick it up from here.
All right. Let's have it.
All right. So, for my end of all of this, me and Wally, we're just, hanging out as Tirsa's talking about. We're about to go pick up Tisha from, Colorado and bring her back. And it's, pretty late at night when we're going to go do this. So we had decided to go ahead and take a substance that was going to help us stay awake for the duration of the drive.
A substance.
And
indeed.
Then at some point, it's like getting really late, like 2:30 in the morning, maybe. And Tisha says, "Don't come pick me up. It's just too late. We're just not going to do it. I'm going to stay here for the night." And so, me and friend Wally just continue hanging out, doing our thing in the basement. And just slowly, we're just noticing, and neither one of us is wanting to say anything about what's kind of starting to make itself apparent, is that there's shadows that are not exactly staying still, things that are kind of starting to move around, and it begins with just kind of, just a black spot that seems to not be just a normal shadow, and we're both, pretty hush-hush, but then all of a sudden, like, there's another person that just shows up and is just sitting in the chair. And at this point, we're both, like, kind of looking at each other confused and not wanting to say anything to not sound insane. And, like, we're just straight up, hallucinating because,
right,
we took a drug. So who knows what's happening to us in our minds, too. So,
but you're seeing the same thing.
It's actually a taller man wearing a top hat.
Crazy.
Who then kind of is just sitting there and watching. And then it just keeps on going. It gets additive at this point. At some point, we start seeing a little girl who is wearing all white and seems friendly and playful. And then we see a girl in all black who we never actually see her face. Dark hair is just constantly obscuring what her face looks like.
Damn.
Let's see.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Then we saw dog with no ears. And I mean, we're both like, so one of us would see something and then the other person would say, hey, did you see that? And this just keeps on happening of like, no, this can't be true. This isn't what's going down. This isn't how real world works, right?
Right.
We've taken some drugs over the years, and
Indeed.
hallucinating is very rarely real things. So,
And very rarely at the same time by two people.
And yeah, it just kind of keeps going, and we begin to be able to like more or less engage with these characters that are just kind of around. And
Wall.
yeah, and then weirdly enough, at some point throughout all of this, like all the characters they're about and moving around, and I look over at a dark wall in the basement, and I actually see it's a pink wall, and it's got some sort of purple writing on it, but it's hard to make out because it's, you know,
Right.
more seeing everything with a mind's eye rather than it's right there for real in front of me.
Yeah. Still pink wall, purple writing.
And this just kind of went on for a while. And at some point, it just kind of fades out of things. But, like, you could still feel that the dark, shadowy character kind of remained the longest. So it was the first one to show up and the last one to leave. Which, it just felt menacing to us the whole time. Like, neither one of me or Wally just wanted to be near it. And as it moved around, it would get close to you, and you could just kind of like feel, I don't want to be here anymore. And so you just, I don't know. Very weird. So we're still awake, you know, all through the night. Finally, day breaks. We go outside, go have, you know, some cigarettes to figure out what just happened to us. So we're just hanging out for a while out there, just chatting about it. You know, as Tirsa talked about, eventually we get in communication with each other, and she comes over and starts telling us this crazy dream. And it's like, there's just no way, right?
What do you mean?
How is it that the things that Tirsa was talking about in her dream somehow managed to make an appearance in my friend's basement? Completely independently.
Yeah.
Never had told us anything about, you know, these spirits of hers previous to this point. And I'm a pretty skeptical guy, so this is not the kind of thing I would have ever really cared about anyways. But
Right.
that randomly forced itself upon me.
Right. So, like, and Tisha hadn't ever shared anything. And, like, Matt, you mentioned, like, earlier that it was, you know, you'd never had any experience like this before. Like, there was nothing that even resembled this experience.
Oh, yeah, not in the slightest. It was just, you know, maybe I had felt something watching me or something, you know, out in the darkness of, you know, the woods or something. But, you know, that happens in the woods no matter what anyways.
Yeah.
Right.
Everybody feels that way every now and then.
Right. But so then after all of this, like, things get really weird because, right, sort of the veil has been broken, so to speak, and my silence no longer exists.
Right.
So as, like, we talk about this and then, like, they tell me their part of the story, it was like, you know, like, now my mind is totally blown, and it's just like, okay, like, how did this happen? Like, what is going on? Like, no, like, I've been trying so hard, like, not to bring this into, like, this part of my life. Like, I'm trying to, like, do something different. I don't want to do this anymore. And here it is. It presented itself despite me trying so hard to get away. And of course, like kind of in all of this, I start telling them, okay, well, here's maybe a little bit more to this story, and tell them about some of that other stuff that had gone down, and sort of start explaining like the characters. And it's like, okay, yeah, no, like you're right, you're big menacing like dark figure, like that's Zach, you're girl in white, that's Olivia. I don't actually know the name of like the other girl. I have no idea like that piece, but
yeah, still.
But the whole time we're just like, right, like there's no way this is real. Like there's no way that this really just happened, because this is totally wild.
Yeah.
Like this is crazy.
For sure.
Like we all had this weird experience that was shared.
Yeah, absolutely. None of it ever made any sense.
Right.
Still never makes any sense. Even, recalling the story now, it makes no sense that this would ever be a thing.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
But like we were drawing up, I was drawing up diagrams. I don't know that anybody else was, as I'm trying to like piece it all together.
Drawing like diagrams, and I don't know. It was like this weird group madness almost, but like it spawned from something that was wildly unexplainable.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I think pretty much all of us were, had this experience of, the shadow people following us around, and
right. Yeah. At that point, like there was no stopping it.
Yeah, everything was just right there.
Mm-hmm.
Again, what do you mean?
Like it was just everywhere. Like, yeah, wherever we went, like there was always these shadow people, and like
Jesus.
And like I would still say it felt like we were coming to some sort of answer. And like the more that we invested into it, like just the crazier things got. And so at some point it was just like it feels like if we continue down this rabbit hole, that we might find the answer. We might find an answer. We might be able to come up with that answer, but what are we losing in the process? Like how much of our own like sense of self and everything, like, I mean, what sanity. Do we actually lose? Yeah. And so we kind of had a conversation, and at that point, like, I'm pretty sure we were all having our own experiences still. We just stopped talking about it, stopped engaging with it, and just left it be. And yeah, I mean, I would say the shadow people still followed. They were present all the way until we left Utah County and started college.
Wow. That's insane.
And at one point, I got curious, I guess. The Ouija board, I still had it, and I got curious at one point when I was down there, just to like see, like, are they still there? And like I just am not seeing them or whatnot. And I actually like pulled it out, and it was not the same spirits.
Oh, really?
It was a completely different thing.
Lame.
Which was really surprising to me. That's not what I would have expected at all, because those were basically the spirits that I was communicating with like the entire time.
Right. So you might not be able to get any more info.
I don't know. I have my own theories about some of that, but like... Yeah, but it actually took like physically relocating ourselves before that actually stopped.
Yeah, I view the world through a generally more scientific lens of rational and logical approach, and evidence is key to everything, but my own eyes and two other people's eyes and experience confirm what I saw, and that it wasn't just madness.
Well, at this point is a lot more than just two other people, and that kind of is one of the biggest reasons I'm glad that we're all doing this and coming together and sharing our experiences, because you don't feel so crazy and you don't feel so alone. And maybe if anyone out there is listening, it'll be that much more convincing. This is all based on truth. We're not just making this up. We didn't get together and corroborate this story. I honestly haven't heard most of the things that I have heard on this interview. until we had this interview.
Like, right, I mean, the rest of everything else kind of fits within your kind of, I guess, standard ghost stories, is kind of how I think about it. And this just, like, defies that. Like, this goes beyond just your standard ghost story. Like, this is something else.
Oh, for sure. I've heard a lot of stories, and especially first-hand personal accounts. Nothing I have ever heard compares to not just my own stories here, but this collection now of extremely unique stories, all based around the same location, especially around here, you know? I mean, you got, like, Skinwalker Ranch, maybe.
And the only way to, right, potentially try and get answers is to re-engage with that. But like I said, like, it literally felt like, insanity.
Right. It was in my mind.
Right. If ever I was going to actually be psychotic, if that, like, ran in my biology, I think that would have been, like, the for real thing that would have done it. Like, everything else, like, yeah, I was pretty crazy, and like I said, I probably could have been diagnosed with psychotic disorder.
Yeah, I can definitely vouch for that as well. I would definitely say the furthest from sanity I've probably been my entire life was while I was going through the engagement at Camp Jeremiah, and then shortly thereafter sent to the Utah Boys Ranch. And I have definitely been known to accredit at least part of that with the affiliations of Camp Jeremiah, and feeling as though an entity possibly escaped as a stowaway in my vessel.
This was still the experience.
Yeah, right.
Or how I remember the experience.
Regardless of how insane it sounds on the outside.
Right.
Yeah. And that's why I really appreciate all of you guys actually coming forward, and sharing some of your most personal experiences of what may have been, probably, if it was anything like mine, the most vulnerable times of your life, really, regardless of how crazy it might sound to other people. As I've probably mentioned before, partial motivation behind doing this is, I don't know, maybe somebody out there hears this and has some extra information or some extra light to share. I don't know if anyone else has had experiences like this before, or maybe a distant relative used to own the place or knows something about the place before it became Camp Jeremiah, which I recently read on Google. The LDS Church donated to the Utah National Parks Council for a Cub Scout day camp in 1966, which is about 6 years after the date that Tirsa got, December 23rd, 1960. There's still so many questions left unanswered. What's behind that date? What's behind the book? But hopefully we will be able to gather even more information and maybe come back with yet another episode about this. So, once again, thank you guys for joining us.
Thanks for, I guess, hearing us out.
Yeah. Thanks for having us on the show, Judas.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about time we did this, and maybe we'll do it again. We still have another story to finish up from the Lehigh Hospital that we were unable to get to, that Maxwell shared for us. And thank you also for joining and sharing us your experiences.
Well, thank you kindly, sir. It's been a jolly and a good time.
It has. Nothing like good quality family bonding. So, if you are still watching out there on YouTube, remember to like, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you know what craziness is coming up next, and stay tuned for more underground music, comedy, horror, and other such oddities of the like. We now turn you back to our regularly scheduled free radio programming.